What's up, guys? In today's video we're going to be doing something really cool, which is converting IP addresses to locations by a robot. Alright, so I have an Excel spreadsheet over here where we have a whole lot of IP addresses. Alright, so it doesn't matter how long this list would be. I'm going to show you how we're going to build a bot to convert IP addresses into their locations, country, region, and city. So let's do an example over here. If I copy this IP address and I come to this website, there's a website called whatismyipaddress.com. All right, and it'll show you what your IP address is, but if you click on IP Lookup, you can search over here for a specific IP. So I just pasted in the one I just copied, and I'm going to click Get IP Details. By clicking that, you can see here it gives us a whole lot of details about that IP. We can see this one is based in South Africa, in the region KwaZulu-Natal, and in the city Howick. All right, so once again, I'll just do another example. This one here. This one is based in Poland. All right, and let's look at this shorter one, right? If we copy this and we search for this, what will that give us? So it's telling us that this is a local host, all right? So it's not a location like an IP address. So basically we need to build a bot which will be able to handle the errors for all of these, right? Because these aren't like proper IP addresses that are going to give us a location. So I'll also show you how to handle those type of errors. Also, one thing to notice, if you look at the URL here, it has the domain whatismyipaddress.com, then it takes us to the page /IP, then it takes us to / and then the IP address that we searched. All right, so whatever IP address we search, it's going to put that into the URL as a parameter. So let's search that. So you see there, it now has this in the URL over there. So we can take advantage of this. All right, so I'm going to show you. So instead of using type into activities and click activities, the more elegant way would just be to navigate to the URL. So let's start building this robot. Let's go into UiPath, all right, UiPath Studio, and let's start building this bot. All right, so we're just busy opening this up. So while we wait, let's just give these titles. We're going to copy the country, the region, and the city. And I'm just going to save that. Cool. So that's saved. What we're going to do now is come here and create a new process. Let's call this IP address, IP location. Cool. I'm not going to worry about giving it a description. I'll now click create. Here we have UiPath Studio. We have an empty canvas. So I'm going to start off by using a read range, all right? Because we want to read the data from the Excel spreadsheet into a data table. So there's a read range activity, this one here. You can either use the Excel or the workbook one. I prefer using the workbook, so I'm just going to drag that in. Then workbook path, I'm going to click here. Well, since we've just created this, right, I'm going to copy paste this Excel spreadsheet to be in the folder. That's best practice instead of having it in different folders somewhere else. So I'm going to cut this. So I just navigated to the folder where the robot is that we just created. Here's our main XAML file, and I'm just going to paste in that Excel spreadsheet over there. So here we have the read range. I'm going to come here and I'm going to select our IP spreadsheet. Great. Sheet 1. Let's just make sure that that sheet is in fact called sheet 1, or if we need to give it a new name. Yes, it's called sheet 1, so that's fine. And what do we want to read? We want to read everything. So we can change this range of A1 to A2 to just 2 quotation marks. Now that's going to read the entire spreadsheet. So I'm going to rename this to read IPs, and let's give this a data table variable. I'm going to right click and say create variable, and let's call this IP addresses. Click enter, and now we have created our variable IP addresses over there. We also have this main sequence. I'm just going to rename this to main, And what else? That seems like everything else should be all right. All right, so now next thing we want to do is we want to loop through every row inside of this data table. So we can use a for each row activity. Here's the for each row activity. We can drag that in just below. So we are going for each row in and then into the data table IP addresses. So we could actually call this for each IP in IP addresses. All right, so let's now use a write line and test this to make sure it's writing everything out. So our column name is IP address, so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come here and we are going to use our variable IP, open brackets, close brackets, and inside there we will put double quotes and enter in between the name of the column, in our case IP address. In order to write this, we're going to have to convert it from an object to a string, so we're going to have to say dot to string. Cool, so let's run this and just make sure that it is actually working and outputting the correct IP address to the output panel. So this is just best practice, just to make sure it works properly. Run. So it says here the process cannot run because it's being used by another process. So that's an important thing. If your Excel sheet is open, it's not going to be able to run. I'm just going to save and close, and let's try run it now. So there you go, finished running. If we come to our output panel, we can see all of the IP addresses have been written to the output panel over there. Great, so we know this is working. So our next step now is to use a try catch activity. Now the reason for that is, remember earlier I showed you in here we had some of these which are going to run into errors. So we need to handle those errors. So the way you do that is using a try catch activity. So I'm just going to delete this, all right, and I'm going to drag in a try catch activity. There's try catch, drag that in over there. Great. So what this does, it's going to try process each IP address. If it fails for any other reason, that error is going to be caught, and then the process is going to continue and move on to the next IP address in the data table. So the reason for this is, if you don't have this, what's going to happen is if it runs into one error, the entire bot's going to break and it won't continue processing all the IP addresses. All right, so in here in our try is where we're going to add in all our processes, but we first need to add a catch. So I'll come here to exception and select system exception, click this white space, and then inside here we can log a message. So I'm going to come log message, and I'm going to log an error message, and the error is going to be the exception. All right, so you see that it says exception. So I'm just using that variable. I just click Control Space to show my variables, then I click exception, and then I say dot to string. Just like that. So this is just the best practice way of always logging what error actually occurs. What I'm also going to do just for this case is I'm going to add a message box. All right, and I'll tell you why I'm adding this. I've already built this bot, so I'm just putting this in here for a specific reason, and I'll tell you what that is later. So I'm going to just have a message box and ask the question continue question mark. Cool. And let's come back to the try over here. Cool. So what we want to do is we want to basically navigate to this browser. All right. What is my IP address.com? So what we can do is we can use a open browser activity. Open browser. There it is. So I'll drag that in and insert URL here. So the URL as a quote, as a string, remember to put your quotes, is the URL that we are navigating to, what is my IP address.com. I'm also going to check here new session, so it opens in a new browser tab. If you don't check that, it's going to open the tab in an already existing browser. So it'll open in here. If I click new tab, it's going to open in a new tab, which I wanted to do. So I'm going to close this, and then we can drag in this for each row inside this open browser. So I'm just going to delete this do sequence, and then I'm just going to drag in this for each row inside there. Cool. So we open the browser, and actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to undo, and I'm going to keep this do sequence, and I'm going to drag this for each row inside the do sequence. And then above this for each row, I'm going to use a maximize browser activity, a maximize window. So what this will do is it's going to maximize the browser. So if it opens it and it's like a smaller or minimized than what it's supposed to be, it'll maximize it to be the full size of the screen. Cool, so let's test this out. All right, all this should do is basically just open the browser. So let's run this. Oh, once again, this is open, so I'm going to have to close that. It's going to run into an error, so let's close that and let's run. There you go. So it just opened up our browser to whatismyipaddress.com. Great, so that works. So I'm going to close this, and you'll notice it opened in Internet Explorer. So we want it to open in Google Chrome. So I'm going to click this drop down and select Chrome. Check that again. Run this. There you go. Now it is opening in Chrome. But now we want it to go to IP Lookup, and we want it to go to the URL that we are currently searching. All right. So if I search this URL, it gives us this URL. So it's https://, which is the protocol, then the domain, then the page, and then the IP address. So I'm going to copy this format, right? Copy that. And I'm going to come here to our try catch, and I'm going to use a navigate to activity. So this will navigate to a certain website inside the browser. So navigate to, drag that in, and then put our double quotes and paste in the URL. But the IP address, of course, changes, all right? And we are looping through each IP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that, right? Delete that text. I'll just click delete on my keyboard. Make sure you keep this little / here. And then we're going to say plus, and then we are going to use IP, our variable IP, all right? And then open bracket, close bracket. And then inside here, we're going to put the name of our column in our Excel spreadsheet, which is IP address. So I'm just opening this up. There you go. It's case sensitive, so you always need to make sure you copy paste it exactly. So I'll come here, copy, come here and paste. Cool. And let's say .toString at the end to get rid of our little error there. Great. So what this will do is it's going to now navigate to the correct website for each IP address. So I'm going to come here, and I'm just going to, let's go to our snippets and drag in a 3-second delay. So there's a 3-second delay, drag that just below there. So we will watch it, how it navigates through each IP. So I'm going to close this, and let's run this and see this work. Once again, I don't learn from my mistakes. Close that spreadsheet. I'll save and run file. So it should open. You see it maximize the browser, and now it's navigated to the correct IP. So look how it's going to change every 3 seconds. It is changing to the site of the correct or the page of the correct IP address. And you can see here how the locations change for every single IP address. So I'm going to show you now how to scrape those. So I'm going to just stop this, and let's come down here and let's use a get text activity. All right, so we're going to get this text that is, oh, let's just go back here, not there. Just going to come back and get a random example. Control C, oh, wrong place, and IP lookup, search for that. So here we have a country, in this case it's United Kingdom, state Suffolk, and city Ipswich. So let's scrape these 3 fields. All right, so to do that, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can just use a get text, you can use OCR, but there's no point of doing that because we can access the UI elements. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use an anchor base activity, all right, just for the purpose of showing you how anchor base works. So we have an anchor base, and then I'm going to use a find element activity, and I'm also going to use a get text activity. So the anchor is the find element, and get text is the text that it scrapes. All right, so find element, first thing we want to find is this country over here. So the actual text country is our anchor. So I'll select country, and then get text over here. I'm going to indicate that, and we're going to select the text, which is United Kingdom. So when you're using this anchor base, you'll notice in the get text activity, there is no selector, all right? And the selectors that it uses is in your anchor over here, and then you need to select the position of your target. So if we select the anchor base, I'm going to select the position is on the left, all right? Because the anchor, in our case, the anchor is the text country is on the left of the United Kingdom. All right, so let's just come back here, and I'm going to call, I'll just leave this anchor base, whatever, find, I'll call that find country, and we can call this, oh, what did I do there? I double clicked into it, get country. Cool, so let's just check out this find country selector. So I'll click these three dots and go edit selector, and we can see we have all these properties. So if we validate that, highlight, it works. You can see it's highlighting in red the country. So I'm going to delete, or I'll uncheck this property. Okay, it omits it there, but I'm actually just going to delete it manually here. And I'm going to validate to see if it works. Highlight, yes it does. All right, cool. So I'm just going to keep to this as my selector for the country. And you see here in the rname property, it says country, which means all the others, we're also just going to need to change the name to state, region, city, etc. And it'll know which one to reference. So I'll click OK. And then next step is we want to create an output variable for the country. So you see here, the output value. I'm going to come here and create a variable, call this country. Click enter. Great. So we can test this out now. To test this, I'm going to use a message box just to pop up as it runs, and I'm going to output the country over there, and I'm just going to delete this 3-second delay. We don't need that anymore. Delete that, and let's try and run this. Before I forget, let's close this browser, let's close my spreadsheet, and let's run this file. There you go, navigate to the browser, to the first IP, there you go. First country is South Africa, we can go double check that, yes it is. Click OK, now it's going to do the next one, United States, yes it is. Click OK. Saudi Arabia, or what is that saying? Wireless broadband, well that's a problem, isn't it? Click OK. Hong Kong, oh, Hong Kong's not a country, is it? And click OK. United Kingdom. Yeah, so that's good enough for now, all right? So I'll just click stop, and let's continue, all right? So I'm going to copy paste this one for the region. So this one we're going to call the region, find region, and we can indicate on screen the region text over there. Edit selector, we can delete the second row once again, validate that, highlight to make sure it's working, yes it is, click OK. Here for the get country, I'm going to rename this to get region. Should probably keep this consistent with a capital R, and our variable here, I'm going to delete that, Control K to create a new one. Call it region, click enter to create it, and now I'll just put another message box with the region, and let's do this one last time for our city. So find city, indicate city, there you go, and our get city over here, we need to add a new variable called city. Control K to create a new one, city, enter. Cool. So notice we don't actually need to come here and indicate on screen to create a get text, because this the selector here doesn't matter because it's referenced from here like I mentioned earlier. So you'll notice these will still work. For any reason, if you do want to change it, it's just so that the image makes sense. Alright, but I'll run it now anyway to show you that it does work. Let's go message box and let's put our city over there. Cool. So let's come here and let's just make sure it's closed and let's run this file. There you go. Comes to the IP, South Africa, then it's KwaZulu-Natal, correct, and then Howick, correct. Click OK. Next one is United States, correct. New York, correct. Brooklyn, correct. Great. So I'm just going to stop this spot here so we can continue building. So if you guys are enjoying this video so far, and if you've learned something new, please just give it a like, just a thumbs up. Really helps out the channel. So we have here the message boxes. So I'm going to delete these now, right? That was just for demonstration purposes and debugging purposes and all that. So I'm going to delete that. Now, the next thing we want to do is write the results of this to our Excel sheet. All right. If I come open this IP's Excel spreadsheet, we want to write the country value there, the region value there, and the city value there. So let's do that quickly. We can use a write cell activity, right? And once again, you can either use Excel or workbook activity. I'm going to use the workbook. So I'll drag this in just below. And first thing we need to select is the workbook path. So I'll come here and select the IP spreadsheet. Sheet 1, we know that's fine. Over here, now this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, because this is the cell we need to write into, all right? And the cell value changes for each IP address. So we know this is row 2, this is row 3, 4, 5, etc. So we need to actually append the country to B2, and the region to C2, and the city to D2. Then for the next IP address, it's going to be B3, C3, D3. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's start here with the country column, and we're going to go to B2. So we're going to come here and we can change this. We can simply write B2, but we can't keep this hard coded because this is going to change for every single row. So the way you can get this number 2 as a variable is inside of our for each row activity. So if I scroll up, come to the for each row, you'll see there's a variable here which is called the index property, the zero-base index of the current element in the collection. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a new variable and call it row number. Just like that, click enter, and now we have a row number variable. So we can come here, scroll down, and I don't know if you noticed, but it said the index is zero base, which means the first row is going to be index 0, second row is index 1, and etc. So I'm going to scroll down here, and then instead of the B2 here, let's just open this up. I'm just going to click these 3 dots so we can open up our expression editor so it's easier to see. So we have B, then I'm going to say plus, and then we're going to start typing row for row number, comes up, you can double click that. Then now we have the row number, but we need to add 2 to this value. All right. One thing you'll notice, I'm just going to click here and come to variables. The row number is an integer. All right. So I'm also just going to change the sequence to the main sequence, and I'm going to come back here to our cell, and I'm going to say row number plus 2. Right. So I'll put that in brackets, and then I'm going to say .to string. So what this is doing is it's taking the first value of the row number, which is 0, and it's adding 2, which means the first row number is going to be 2, and then it's going to be 3, 4, etc. All right, so the first iteration is going to be 0 plus 2, then it's going to be 1 plus 2, then 3 plus 2, 2 plus 2, then 3 plus 2, etc. So I'll just click OK. And then the cell content is going to be the country. Right, so I'm going to call this write country. And just like that, that should be it. So I'm going to close this and let's test this to make sure it's working. All right, so I'm going to come here and run this file. Let's see. Cannot communicate with the browser. Please check the UI path extension. All right, I'm actually glad this error came up. Sometimes this does happen. So I'm just going to click OK and stop it. And I'm going to show you what's going on here. If we come to UI Explorer and we click Indicate Element, you'll see it's picking up the entire browser as one element. So it's not able to identify the individual elements. So the way to fix this is to close your browser and then try and run it again. Run file. I don't think this is going to work. Oh, it is working. Look at that. Cool, it's working. But for some reason, it didn't open in a new session like it was supposed to. Let's come stop here. Make sure it is checked. New session is checked. So I'm not sure why that happened. Let me close that. And let's try and run this again, see what happens. Should open in a new session. Maybe that was just a little bug. There you go. Now it opened in a new session. Cool. And now it's able to actually work and it's actually running. So if we come to UI Explorer here, the fan on my laptop's going crazy right now from all the processing it's doing. But if I come to Indicate Element, you'll see now I'm able to indicate or access the UI element on the screen. So that was just a quick debugging we did there. So if that ever happens to you, you know what to do. Just close Chrome and reopen it. So our next steps now is, since we have just written the country, we want to do the same for both the city and the region. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to copy this and paste this. And we know our region is not in column B, it's actually in column C. So if we come here, it's going to be in the region. And also look at that, you can see it actually did output our outputs countries in the right cells, so that's good. So we have column C for region and column D for city, and then the row number variable will stay the same. So that's a quick fix. We come here, we'll change this B to a C, and then we can come here. Oh, let's not forget to change country over here to our region variable. Once again, we can copy paste this activity and write city like that, and this is now column D. Great. And then change our variable here to our city. Great. So that should be it, guys. That should now scrape all the region, country, region, and city. All right. So I'm going to run this and let's see what happens. I'm going to click Don't Save and close this browser. I'm going to come here and I'm going to click Run File. So let's see what happens. Let's see if this runs all the IP addresses perfectly. So as you can see, it's changing. It's literally taking about 1 or 2 seconds between each IP address. It looks like there's a problem now. Oh, I know what the problem is. So no, I don't know what the problem is. So let's just wait for this thing to give us an error to see what the problem is. Because this should have continued. It shouldn't be taking so long. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come here and stop this, right? Because it was going to run into an error eventually. And I'm just going to come to our find country, and I'm going to set a timeout for these to 2000 milliseconds, because the default timeout is 30 milliseconds, which is 30 seconds. So we don't have that time to waste. So I'm just going to write 2000, even 1000 is enough, but I'm just going to write 2000 for all of these. Which means if this activity runs into an error, it's not going to take 30 seconds to tell me. These activities don't have timeouts. And let's try and run this again. So let's come here, run file. Okay, cool. So it's running. So this was the one that also previously had a problem. So you can see it ran into an error, and then we got our pop-up continue, and then I can say yes or no. I'm just going to say okay to continue. Once again, we have a problem. See, once again, we have a problem, but remember this one here isn't an well, maybe it is an IP address. Maybe it's because it can't seem to find the city. Yeah, that's right, because you can see it has the country, but it doesn't have a region or city, so that's why it's running into an error. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to, instead of first scraping then writing, I'm going to put these into their position so it can actually scrape. So if it finds a country, it'll write the country. If it finds the region, it'll write the region. Ooh, go back there. You drag that above, and just like that. So instead of it's running into an error and they're not writing anything, rather only not write it if it hasn't found it. So let's try and run this again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to make these timeouts even shorter. Let's go 1000, just so we don't wait as long for the errors to happen. Is that all of them? No, I think I'm missing the last one. Just like that. So let's come here, run file. There you go. Continue, okay. There you go, it's done. So let's come here and open our spreadsheet. And there is our output. Right, so some of these like had errors that I'm going to have to find another way to fix, which is most probably adjusting the selector on the find element activity. But I'm not going to do that now. But you can see how it's scraped most of the data for these IP addresses. We have the country, the region, and the city. So every bot that I build, I do provide you the XAML files and all the resources. So you're going to get all of this. So yeah, that was a very long video. I hope it was helpful to you. And if it was, please give this video a like, and also subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about how to build bots with UiPath. Thanks for watching.